The Netherlands looks set to have its most right-wing government in decades after a deal was reached between four parties following months of negotiations. The announcement was made by anti-Islam politician Geert Wilders, whose Party for Freedom received the most votes in last November's elections. It's still not clear who will become Prime Minister. Wilders' hardline views on Islam meant he had to step aside from taking that role, so a deal could be reached. Simon Oetjes is an assistant professor at Leiden University in the Netherlands. I asked him how big of a shakeup this coalition is for Dutch politics.
Well, it's a very big shakeup in the sense that the PVV in the Netherlands has never been a party of government. It has tolerated the government between 2010 and 2012. So in that period, it had a role in government, but now it has a leading role in the new government, and we will see it also in the composition of the government. You can also see it in the emphasis on issues in the new coalition agreement. In particular, migration is discussed in a lot of detail, even though this is supposed to be an agreement that is on a broad strokes of policies. When it comes to immigration, it's really detailed, which shows the focus of this party on limiting migration to the Netherlands.
Let's talk about that agenda, because Wilders has argued for some radical policies in his manifesto, such as a ban on Islamic schools, mosques and the Quran, and a vote on leaving the European Union. Will he be able to enact his agenda?
Those issues were all shelved very early in the coalition negotiation process. The agreement was made to only pursue policies that are constitutional, and the policies you mentioned clearly are not constitutional because they would interfere with the freedom of religion, and therefore those have not been included in the coalition agreement, which very strongly focuses on limiting migration instead of dealing with integration in great detail. When it comes to the referendum on EU membership, Wilders himself has even in the last months really shifted his position on that, and has now signaled in his new manifesto for the European Parliament elections that his party wants the Netherlands to remain a part of the European Union, even though earlier he promised he would leave the European Union. So there you can even see that his own position has shifted during these negotiations.
So what will be the focus of this new government? What is the agenda that this government has?
So there are three key issues in the coalition agreement. The first is limiting migration. And those are all forms of migration. It includes labor migration, refugees, study migration. The second key issue is dealing with the crisis that the Netherlands has in terms of the problems with nitrogen pollution. This coalition really wants to reopen negotiations with Brussels regarding the rules for nature preservation in the Netherlands in order to deal with this issue. It is unlikely that will happen, but that's a major issue. And the third issue, at least according to negotiators, is ensuring that people have a basic standard of living. This is where the coalition agreement is less detailed than on other issues, but it's clear that that some of the parties want to lower, that they agreed on lowering taxes in order for people to have a larger spendable budget.
As we understand, Wilders says he won't be Prime Minister, so who might head the government?
We can all speculate about that, and that's a favorite pastime of political scientists now. We really do not know. There are some names that are going around. It is clear that Wilders will not become Prime Minister. It's also unlikely that another person from his party will become Prime Minister. So it's likely that we'll have a Prime Minister who's independent of political parties. There are names going around of people who are involved in the coalition negotiations, like Mr. Plasterk, who led one of the rounds of formation talks, and is a former minister for the Labour Party, but it's very unclear who will become Prime Minister. There's no sort of certainty around that.
Professor, the Netherlands is one of a number of European countries seeing a rise in support for the far right. Why is there so much support for Wilders?
So the support for Wilders in the Netherlands can really be explained by the dynamics of the coalition, of the election campaign last year. And that is because the Netherlands has a majority of voters who would like to see migration limited, but they used to split their vote basically between the radical right and the center right. And because the center right had indicated that they would never govern with the radical right since 2012, that made it the radical right rather unattractive. In this coalition, in this election campaign, the center-right Liberal Party said that they were open to a government with the PVV, and therefore it made it an option for voters to vote for PVV, which they did in large numbers. So in many ways, the positioning of the center-right, both in opening the door to Wilders and focusing the campaign on migration, really opened the door for Wilders' victory. The center-right is in control.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Simon Oetjes from Leiden University, thanks so much for joining us today.